The last light is going off the top of a painted stone building, and it is the reddest thing you have ever seen. Good evening, and welcome to Worlds Before Morning. Tonight we are going to a city in the rainforest, 1200 years ago, on an ordinary evening when everything is fine. That last part matters more than it sounds, and it is the whole reason for this episode. Almost everything ever made about these cities is about how they ended. Tonight nobody is ending. Tonight the reservoirs are full, the Maize is in. A few thousand people are about to go to sleep in a place that works. So settle yourself properly before we go down into it. Let the pillow take your head. Unclench whatever your hands are still holding. Here is what the night holds, and none of it is a test. We will walk a plaza floored in white plaster that has been soaking up sun since morning, and we'll give it back to your bare feet for hours. We will sit with a family in a house with no door, listening to the forest start up, and find that the loudest animal in this whole country is smaller than the dog asleep by the hearth. And somewhere in the small hours, we will climb to a platform. A man up there is watching a particular star do a particular thing and writing it down. His city has been keeping that record for longer than anybody there can remember. If these quiet nights are useful to you, there is a subscribe button, and it will still be there tomorrow. That is all I will ask. From here on there is only the city, the forest, and my voice getting lower. One thing before we go down. The people of this city are not gone. Their descendants are alive today, several million of them, speaking languages closely related to the one you will hear in these courtyards. Some of them will watch this. So we are not visiting a ruin tonight, and we are not visiting a mystery. We are visiting somebody's great-great-grandparents on a Tuesday, where the stone can tell us, I will say what it says. Where it cannot, I will say that too. The light is nearly off the high buildings now. Down here it is already blue. Come along the white road and keep your voice down, because somewhere past the last wall, the forest is awake. The first thing to fix in your head is the color, because everybody gets it wrong, including me until somebody showed me. You have seen these buildings, gray stone, bare, stepped, standing out of green forest in photographs. That is what 1,000 years of rain does to them. Tonight they are red, not a dull red, a deep, warm iron red, laid over white plaster in a coat you could put your palm against. In the last of the sun, the whole city is the color of a clay pot fresh out of the fire. The great buildings have panels of other colors worked into them, cream and a strong blue-green, and the plaster around the doorways carries modeled figures painted in the same palette, faces and headdresses standing out from the wall in half-relief. Walk up and touch the wall of the nearest platform. The plaster is smooth, slightly gritty and warm. It has been in the sun all day, and it will hold that warmth most of the night. That fact is going to come back over and over tonight, because it changes how everybody here lives after dark. The plaster is made from limestone, burned in enormous pits with wood cut from the forest, then slaked and mixed and spread. It is beautiful and it is expensive. A single building's coat of plaster costs a small forest, and everybody in this city knows it, and nobody says it out loud. Look down. The plaza floor is the same material, poured flat and polished, running away from you for 200 paces, pale and glowing faintly as the light goes. There is nobody on it. The plaza is a daytime thing, full of business and ceremony and market, and at this hour it empties and stays empty until morning. Cross it anyway and listen to your own feet. Stop in the middle and turn round slowly, because this is the view the city was built to give you. On 3 sides of this plaza stand pyramids, not smooth ones, stepped, steep, rising in a series of terraces to a small building at the top. Each one carries a wall of decorated stone above that building that makes it look taller still. They are high. The tallest of them puts its little summit temple 200 feet above where you are standing, which is above the canopy. That is exactly the point. From up there, a person can see out over the whole forest to the next city's temples on the horizon. The sun has gone from the plaza, but it is still on the upper terraces, and it is doing the thing it does every clear evening. The red goes to orange, then to a color that has no name. Then the light climbs the last few steps and comes off the top and is gone. Now the buildings are dark shapes against a sky that is still bright. Sound arrives while you are watching this, not from the plaza, which stays empty, but from every direction beyond it. The ordinary evening noise of several thousand people finishing their day at the same time in houses you cannot see, because the houses are not here. They are out among the trees, in family compounds spread across miles of low hills. This stone center is where those people come to do things together, and not where they sleep. A city here is not a wall with houses inside it. It is a dense scatter, a whole landscape of households and gardens and orchards, with this white ceremonial heart in the middle of it. Somewhere out past the last wall, the forest is awake and beginning to say so. Leave the plaza by the eastern side and take the raised road, because it is one of the best things in this country, and almost nobody thinks about it. It is a causeway, 20 feet wide, built up above the ground on a bed of rubble, faced and floored in the same white plaster as the plaza. It runs dead straight into the trees. They are called white roads, and at night the name explains itself. There is no moon at all tonight, and the forest either side is already black, and this thing under your feet is glowing. Not brightly, but enough that you could walk it at a good pace with no light at all, and people do walk out along it. The surface is hard and slightly uneven, patched in places where the rain got in. It is warm through your feet like everything else here. There are no wheels in this country. None. It is not that nobody in this world thought of them, because small wheeled figures turn up further north in Mexico. But there are no draft animals here at all. A wheel is not much use on a wet forest hillside without an ox to pull it. So everything moves on backs, in tumplines, along roads like this, at walking pace. That is worth sitting with for a moment. Every stone in the city behind you was carried here by a person. Every basket of lime, every load of plaster, every roof beam. The entire white heart of this place is the accumulated weight of human backs over generations. The road runs on into the dark toward another group of buildings a mile off, and beyond that to another city entirely, 2 days away. Off to the left in the trees, something big shifts its weight on a branch and settles again. Turn off the road onto a footpath and walk in among the trees, and after a couple of minutes you will come to somebody's home. It is not one house. It is 4, arranged loosely around a small open yard of packed earth, each of them a single room with low stone walls and a high steep roof of palm thatch. The doorways have no doors. Some have a cloth or a mat hung across, and most have nothing at all. This is a family, not a couple with children, but a household in the older sense. A grandmother, her 2 sons and their wives, 7 children, and an unmarried aunt who is the best weaver in this hill. The yard is the actual living room. It is swept absolutely clean, hard as a floor, and everything that happens in daylight happens here. Look around it in the last of the light. A grinding stone with its handstone lying across it. 3 water jars in the shade of the wall. A low bench of stone. A frame where cotton is drying. Half a dozen turkeys settling in the corner, with a great deal of complaint, a dog asleep already, in the exact spot where the last of the sun was. Behind the houses the garden starts, and it is not a vegetable patch. It is a worked forest. Cacao in the shade, avocado, papaya, breadnut, chili and squash and beans low down. A tobacco plant, a cotton bush. Everything mixed together in a way that looks like chaos, and is nothing of the sort. Beyond that, the maize field on the slope, cut and stubbled at this season. Beyond that, the forest. Somewhere past the last wall, the forest is awake, and from here you can hear exactly how awake. Sit down on the edge of the yard, where you are out of the way, because the family is eating, and it is worth watching how. The fire is a hearth of 3 stones on the ground, inside the largest house. The smoke goes up through the thatch, which is why the underside of every roof in this city is black and shining, and why the palm lasts longer than it should. Over the fire on the 3 stones sits a flat clay griddle. The grandmother is making tortillas, and she has been doing it since she was 6, and she does not look at her hands. She takes a ball of dough from the bowl, presses and turns it between her palms until it is a disc the size of her hand, lays it on the griddle, and starts the next. When the first one lifts and puffs, she flips it with her fingers quickly and does not flinch. The dough is maize, and getting it to be dough is the great invention of this whole part of the world. Dried maize is boiled with wood ash or lime and left overnight. That softens the kernel and loosens the skin. It also releases the nutrition inside, without anybody here knowing why, so that a person can live on maize and beans and stay well. Whoever worked that out did it thousands of years before tonight. Their name is not recorded anywhere, and half the world eats because of it. Beside the griddle, a pot of beans is going. There is a bowl of ground chili and salt, and a stack of finished tortillas in a cloth. Everyone eats sitting on the ground in the yard, with their fingers from the same dishes. The children first, then the adults. Nobody hurries. Talk is quiet and mostly about a wall that needs rebuilding. The smell is the whole memory of this place. Toasted maize, wood smoke, chili, wet earth, and underneath everything the green rot of the forest. Watch what happens next, because it takes about 20 minutes and it happens in every compound in this city at the same time. The eating finishes. The griddle comes off the stones and goes on the ground to cool. The pots are set aside, and one of the wives takes the water jar and pours a little over her hands and the children's, and that is the washing. The fire is not put out. It is let down. Nobody adds wood. The flames drop. The sticks burn through and fall in, and what is left is a low bed of embers under a gray skin, and that will still be warm at dawn. And in the morning, a handful of dry palm and 3 breaths will bring it back. Fire is not free here. Everything burns wood, and the wood comes from the forest. The forest is walking further away every decade because of the lime kilns and the fields. Nobody lights a lamp because there are no lamps here. What there is when somebody needs to see is a splint of ricinus pine, carried burning and smoking and lasting a few minutes. Nobody wastes one on an ordinary evening. When the fire goes down, the dark is very nearly complete. It is simply accepted, in a way that is very hard to imagine if you have grown up with a switch on a wall. So the yard goes dark, and the shapes of people move around it by memory. The turkeys have stopped complaining. The dog has not moved. A child is carried in half asleep and does not wake. And in the dark, the last thing anybody does, the grandmother goes out to the yard's edge with a small clay dish, drops in a lump of pale resin, and takes an ember to it with a stick. Copal. It catches, and the smoke that comes off it is sweet and heavy and green. It goes up into the dark over the compound. She says something short quietly, that we are not going to translate or explain, and goes inside. In the yard, in the last of the light, the ant is finishing a row, and she will not stop until it is done. Her loom is not furniture. It is a set of sticks and a strap. One end is tied to the doorpost of the smallest house. The other end runs to a broad woven band that goes around her lower back. She sits on the ground with her legs straight out, and she tensions the whole thing by leaning away from the post. That is the entire machine. It costs nothing. It packs into a bundle you could carry under one arm, and every length of cloth in this compound came off one. Watch her hands. The shed rod lifts half the threads. The batten goes in flat and turns on edge to open the gap. The shuttle goes through. The batten beats the new thread down against the last one with 3 short strokes. Then the whole thing reverses for the opposite shed. She does not look at any of it. She is watching the children. The cloth is cotton, grown in the garden, picked, cleaned of seed by hand, spun on a stick with a small clay whorl at the bottom and dyed. The blue in the stripe came from indigo grown 4 compounds over. The red-brown came from a bark. A woman here spends an enormous share of her life doing this. It is not a hobby, and it is not decoration. Cloth is clothing. Cloth is tribute owed to the city. Cloth is what you trade at market for the things your garden does not grow. In some periods, cloth is what a household literally pays its taxes in. She reaches the end of the row, lays the batten down, and pulls the tension out of the warp by leaning forward. Then she unhooks the strap from her back, rolls the whole loom up around its sticks with the work still on it, and stands it in the corner of the house against the wall, where it will wait for tomorrow. Somewhere past the last wall, the forest is awake, and she has not heard it in years. Before it goes fully dark, take stock of the animals here, because the list is shorter than you expect, and the gaps in it explain a great deal. Turkeys first, 6 of them in the corner, going up onto a low frame to roost with a lot of unnecessary discussion. They are the domestic bird of this whole region, kept for meat and feathers and for festivals. They came from further north, brought down the trade routes already tame. There is a wild turkey in this forest too, a different bird, and nobody here has ever managed to keep it. Dogs second, 2, the one asleep in the warm patch, and a smaller nervous one that belongs to the children. They are small, short-coated, and they are kept for company, for warning, for hunting, and on particular occasions for meat, which is a thing that is simply true and which we will not be squeamish about. Bees third, in their logs under the shelter, and that is the entire list. There are no cattle, no sheep, no goats, no pigs, no horses, no donkeys, not one large domestic animal anywhere in this part of the world at this date. Far to the south in the Andes, there are llamas and they carry loads. Nothing of the kind has ever reached here. Sit with that for a second, because almost everything about this world follows from it. No draft animals means no plow. Fields are worked with a pointed stick, by hand, by people. No pack animals means everything travels on human backs or in canoes. No large herds means no milk, no cheese, no butter, no wool, no leather in quantity, and no manure to put back on the fields. It also means no cattle diseases crossing into people, and that seems to be a large part of why this hemisphere never grew the epidemics that shaped the other one, and part of why what happens when the two meet will be so catastrophic. The turkeys settle, 1 dog size. Take the narrow footpath that runs from this compound to the next one along the hillside, in the dark, because it will tell you what this city actually is. The path is a foot wide, packed hard, and it winds. It goes around a rock outcrop, along the edge of a garden terrace, under a low branch that everybody ducks without thinking, down into a dip where it is muddy in the wet season and stays soft. There are no street lights, obviously, and no lamps, and it is genuinely dark under the trees. You will walk it by feel. The change in the ground, the branch, the smell of the neighbor's copal, the sound of their turkeys. Everybody who lives here can do it at a run. After 200 yards there is another compound. 4 houses round a yard, exactly like the last one, with a fire going down and people settling. 200 yards further, another. And so on over hill after hill, for miles in every direction. That is the shape of this city. Not blocks and streets. A dense scatter of family compounds set in their own gardens and orchards, thinning gradually toward the edges without ever quite stopping, with the white ceremonial center as its heart and the causeways as its arteries. At its height, a place like this holds tens of thousands of people spread across an area you would call countryside if you saw it from the air. It is a garden city, in the most literal sense available. The neighbor's dog barks twice as you pass and stops. Overhead between the crowns, the first real stars are out. Come back along the path to the first compound, because one of the sons is still working in the last of the gray. He is sitting on his heels by the wall of the smallest house. Across his knees lies a flat piece of sandstone about the size of a folded cloth. It came from a riverbed 2 days from here, and it cost him a length of good weaving. There is a shallow dish worn into the middle of it from years of use. On the ground beside him are the things that need attention before tomorrow. A digging stick split at the working end, an axe head of chert, hafted into a wooden handle that has begun to shift in its socket, a bone all with a rough point, 2 obsidian blades that have gone past being useful. He starts with the axe because the axe matters most. The head comes out of the haft with a twist. The wood inside has shrunk away from the stone over the dry months, and the bark cord round the outside has gone slack with it. He unwinds the cord, coils it, and finds the edge with his thumb. Then he works it. Chert is not glass, and it does not part in long, clean flakes the way the black stone does. An axe edge here is not meant to be thin either. A thin edge in hardwood chips away in an afternoon. What he wants is a short, strong bevel that will take 1,000 blows and come home again. The sound is the best one in the yard at this hour. Not a scrape, a slow, soft rasp, stone against stone, with a little water from the jar. 3 strokes one way, then 3 the other. Then a long pause while he looks at what he has done. The paste that comes up under his hand is gray and gritty, and smells of wet riverbed. Nobody in this city buys a finished tool. You buy a stone, or a core, or a length of cord, and the rest of it is your evening. When the edge suits him, he sets a lump of pine resin in a broken potsherd. He holds it over the embers until it slumps and runs. The head goes back into its socket, bedded in that. He binds the cord round it wet, so it will tighten as it dries, and stands the whole thing against the wall to set overnight. Then the digging stick, which is the tool that feeds every person on this hillside. It is a hardwood shaft the height of a man, pointed and hardened in fire. In a country with no plow and no ox, that is how a field gets planted. He trims the split back with a blade. He turns the point slowly in the embers until it darkens. Then he rubs it down with a handful of sand until it is smooth enough not to blister a palm. The blades take him no time at all. Obsidian is not sharpened, it is struck. The dull 2 go into the basket for the midden, and 2 fresh ones come off the shelf in their cloth. His hands do most of this without him. He was taught it at 9, by a man who is under the floor of the house behind him. He will teach it to the boy asleep inside, probably next year, probably badly at first. Every one of these things will be wanted at first light. That is the whole reason A man sits out here in the dark. Instead of lying down, he lays a mat over the lot against the dew. He goes in. Over in the next compound, the light has nearly gone. The children out in the yard have about a quarter of an hour left, and they know it exactly. There are 5 of them. 3 belong here. 2 came over the path after supper, and will be walked home in a while by an older sister who is bored of them already. The oldest is 9, and she is in charge of everything happening in this yard, and nobody has ever said so out loud. There is a baby in this too. The 9-year-old has had it on her hip most of the evening. She moved it to the other hip twice, then set it down on a mat when the running started. It watches the game from there with its whole attention and no expression at all. The game is one that children play in every century, in some form. One of them stands facing the wall of the house with a hand over her eyes and counts out loud, by 20s, while the rest go. There is not much to hide behind. The 3 water jars, the drying frame with the cotton on it, the dark strip under the raised granary, which is the best place and is therefore taken first, every single time by whoever runs fastest. The counting voice is the steadiest thing in the yard. Under it, bare feet go over swept earth almost silently, because a child raised on this ground knows where the hard patches are. Somebody behind a jar is holding in a laugh, and doing it badly. The turkeys, who have watched this every evening of their lives, do not stir. When the finding is done, they move on to something quieter. The light is going, and somebody's mother is about to say so. One of the small ones has a clay whistle shaped like a bird, with a hole in the tail. It makes one soft note and nothing else. Another has a dog modeled in clay, with 4 little wheels under it. That is a toy. In a country with no cart and no draft animal, it is also the only wheel anybody here will ever own. The ball comes out last. It is solid rubber, the size of a fist, made from the sap of a tree an hour's walk away. It does the thing that rubber does. Nothing quite like it will reach the other side of the world for centuries yet. Here it is an ordinary object that an ordinary child leaves out in the yard and gets told off for. They play a version of the Ballcourt game with it, badly, off the wall of the house, hips and forearms, because that is how it is done. Nobody keeps score for long. Then the voice from the doorway, quiet twice, and that is that. The neighbors too go off along the path in the black with their sister. No light, no fuss. They will be in their own yard, inside 3 minutes. The 3 here come in, get a hand of water over the face and climb up onto the bench. The 9-year-old is last, because she puts the ball back in its basket and the whistle on the shelf where it lives. They are asleep inside 4 minutes. All of them. Now stand still in the yard in the dark and let the forest start. It does not fade in. It arrives in layers, each one on top of the last, over about a quarter of an hour. Once you have heard it, you will never think of a rainforest as peaceful again. Insects first, and they are not background. Cicadas here can put out a sound that arrives in your chest. A hard, dry sawing that starts in one tree and is answered from 4 others until the whole hillside is doing it. Under that, crickets, in numbers that produce not a chirping but a continuous silver ringing. Then frogs. The rains have not long finished, and every hollow in this country holds water, and every pool has frogs in it. They range from a low wooden knocking to a piercing single note like a wet finger on glass. There are dozens of kinds within 100 yards of where you are standing. Then at the top of it all, the thing that makes visitors sit up. It begins as a low growl a long way off, more felt than heard, and it builds. Within a few seconds it is a roar that fills the whole valley, rising and falling. It goes on for a minute or more, and it sounds exactly like something enormous that is coming for you. It is a monkey, a howler, hanging in a tree half a mile away, weighing about as much as a spaniel, with a throat built like a resonating chamber. It is the loudest land animal in this hemisphere, and it is telling a rival troop where the boundary is. Everyone in this city has heard that sound every night of their lives, and nobody in this yard so much as turns a head. Listen to it die away. Another troop answers from the other direction, further off. Then the insects close over the gap, and the forest goes back to its ringing. Somewhere past the last wall, the forest is awake, and now you know what that means. Go and look inside the house while the family settles, because the arrangement is worth understanding, and it will not take long. The room is small, perhaps 12 feet by 8, with low stone walls and the great steep thatch above going up into darkness. There is one doorway and no windows, and after the fire dies, the inside is completely black. Along the back wall runs a bench of stone and packed earth, plastered smooth, about knee-high and wide enough to lie on. Most of the family sleeps there, on woven palm mats, wrapped in lengths of cotton cloth. There are no hammocks. That surprises people, because a hammock is the thing everybody associates with this part of the world. But the evidence for them here at this date is thin, and the benches are real, and are found in house after house, built into the walls at the time of building. The cloth matters more than the bench. Nights here are warm, but at 3 in the morning at this altitude, with the humidity, it will be cool enough that a person wants covering, and everybody has a length of woven cotton for exactly that. There are no beds for children separately. Small ones sleep against adults. Look up into the roof. Things live up there. Bats go in and out through the gap at the gable end all night, working the insects, and nobody minds them at all. A gecko is on the wall by the door and will be there in the morning. Under the bench in a niche sits a plain pot with a lid. That is the household's own dead, or one of them. Grandparents are often buried right there, under the floor of the house they built. The family goes on living over them. That is not gloomy here. It is closer to the opposite. The house has its people in it, all of them, and nobody has been sent away. The breathing in the room settles. Outside, the ringing goes on. Go back out to the white road and follow it the other way, past the plaza, to the low ground on the southern side, because there is a lake there that nobody made by accident. It is a reservoir, several acres of still water held behind an earth and rubble dam, with the bottom and sides sealed, fed by every plastered surface in the city above it. That is the trick, and it is the reason a city of this size can stand on this ground at all. There is no river here. There are no springs worth the name. The limestone underneath drinks rain like a sponge and takes it far down out of reach. For half the year it pours. For the other half almost nothing falls. So the whole city is a catchment. The plazas are graded to shed water. The causeways channel it. The plaster that makes this place look magnificent is also, quietly, waterproofing. Every drop that lands on the ceremonial center runs downhill into tanks like this one. Stand at the edge. The water is black and absolutely flat, and it holds the first stars. Frogs are loud here, and something small keeps breaking the surface and dropping back. This water will have to last until the rains return. Every household in the city depends on it, along with their own smaller tanks, bottle-shaped pits cut into the bedrock and plastered inside, though only a minority of households here have one. What they were mainly used for is still argued over. There is a man sitting on the dam with a stick across his knees, not doing anything in particular. He will be there for another 2 hours before somebody replaces him. Whether he is guarding it or watching the level, or simply the person whose turn it is not something the stone can tell us. That there was a person on the dam at night is about as sure as anything gets. Come back up and go round behind the eastern pyramid, where the ground drops into a long, narrow alley between two sloping stone walls. This is the Ballcourt, and it is empty, and empty is the best way to see it. Two parallel platforms with steeply battered faces, a flat playing alley between them perhaps 100 feet long, and the whole thing sunk slightly, so that spectators stand above and look down, set into the floor of the alley. 3 flat stone discs in a line, carved and worn smooth in the middle. Those are the markers. The stone rings you have seen in photographs belong to other cities, in other centuries, further north. Walk down into the alley and stand in the middle. The acoustics change immediately. Your own breathing comes back at you off both walls, and a word said normally arrives twice. The game is played with a solid rubber ball, heavy, made from the sap of a tree that grows an hour from here, and struck with hips and forearms rather than hands or feet. It is fast, it hurts, and players wear thick padding for exactly that reason. It is also, in ways that are absolutely certain but not simple, more than a game. Ballcourts sit in the ceremonial heart of city after city. The game appears in their art and their stories, tied up with the movement of the sun, with the underworld, with contest and renewal. Whether particular games ended in the way that popular retellings insist is a live argument. The honest position is that it happened sometimes, in particular contexts, and was nothing like the ordinary run of games. Tonight it is a stone alley full of cool air with nobody in it. The rings are up there, black against the sky. Somebody has left a torn piece of padding on the bench at the north end, and will be looking for it in the morning. Go back into the plaza, where a row of upright slabs stands in the open. Put your hand on the nearest one. They are stelae, single blocks of limestone taller than a person, set upright in the plaza floor, carved on every face. In the dark, you read them with fingers. The front carries a figure in very high relief. The detail is astonishing. A standing man in an enormous headdress of feathers, a belt with heads hanging from it, sandals, a staff held across the body. Around him and down both sides and across the back run columns of small square blocks. Those are glyphs. Writing, a full writing system, capable of putting down any sentence in the spoken language, using signs that stand sometimes for whole words and sometimes for syllables, arranged in paired columns and read in a particular zigzag order. It took scholars most of a century to crack, and the breakthrough came from realizing that these are not mystical symbols. They are a language, written down, with grammar and names and dates, and what they mostly say is, this ruler on this day did this thing. The dates are the extraordinary part. Run your finger down the left column, and you are touching a count of days that runs continuously from a fixed starting point thousands of years back, without gaps, without needing a king's reign to anchor it. A day recorded on this stone can be placed to the exact day in your century. Nobody else in the world at this date is doing that. The stone is warm on the west face and cool on the east. Cross to the tallest building and stand at the bottom of the stair and look up. You will not see the top. The stair goes up in front of you at an angle that is genuinely alarming. Steps narrow and high. It disappears into the dark long before the summit. Go up if you like. Turn your feet sideways, which is what everybody here does, and take it slowly. The stone is warm through your hands. The steps are worn in the middle. Halfway up, the plaza below has become a pale rectangle, and the household fires out in the trees are a scattering of dull orange points across several miles of black. At the top there is a small building with a single doorway. Above it stands a wall of carved stone, going up into the sky for no structural reason at all. It is there purely to make the whole thing higher and more visible from further away. Inside the doorway is a narrow chamber with a corbelled roof, courses of stone stepping inward until they nearly meet, and a capstone bridges the gap. It works, it is strong, and it makes rooms that are tall and thin and shaped like the inside of a tent. There is copal ash on the floor, and the smell has not gone. Turn round and sit on the top step. The forest is a black sea in every direction with no edge to it, going right to the horizon. 2 other cities are out there. In daylight, you could see their temples standing above the canopy. Now there is only one point of light, very far off. That might be a fire and might be a star sitting low. Above you, the sky is entirely uninterrupted. Go back into the first compound and look at the low platform in the corner. You have walked past it 3 times without noticing. It is knee-high, plastered, about the size of a table, with a small niche built into the side facing the houses. In front of it is the dish, where the grandmother burned copal. Inside the niche, in the dark, are objects. Feel them with your fingertips gently, and put each one back where it was. A small pottery figure, hand-modeled, of a seated woman. A worked shell. 3 pieces of jade, so small they are almost chips. A stone tool of a kind that has not been made for 2,000 years, which somebody in this family found in a field and understood immediately to be old and important, and which has been here ever since. That last one deserves a moment. These people know that other people were here before them. They dig up the tools and they keep them. What happens at this platform is not something we are going to walk into and describe, because the honest evidence for household practice is thinner than the confident books suggest, and because it is not ours. What can be said plainly is this: every compound excavated in this region has something like it. The materials are the same everywhere: incense, small figures, shell, jade, food, and drink. The direction it faces is not random, and whatever else it is the place where this family talks to the people under the floor. The dish is still faintly warm. The smell of copal has settled into the plaster over years, and will still be detectable in it when somebody lifts this platform in 1,200 years and writes down what they find. Step back into the yard and leave it. At the edge of the compound, in a patch of bare limestone, there is a plastered lid the size of a dinner plate, set flush with the ground. Lifted, underneath is a hole about as wide as your shoulders, and below that the shaft opens out into a chamber shaped like a bottle, cut down into the bedrock and lined with plaster, going down further than you can see. It is a cistern, and this household's life depends on it as much as on the great reservoir. The whole compound is graded toward this lid. The yard is cambered. The house roofs shed onto the yard. During the rains, every drop that falls on this family's ground runs across the packed earth and down that hole. The plaster lining holds it. Drop a small stone in. It takes a moment, and then a solid plunk, and it is not far down. The tank is a good 2/3 full, which at this point in the dry season is comfortable but not generous. The water in it is cold, and it is dark. It will be drinkable for months because it went in clean, and it stays sealed and lightless. That lid is not decorative. Leave a tank open and you get insects, and evaporation and animals falling in. Every compound on this hillside has at least one of these. The city's public reservoirs are the big system. This is the small one, household by household. That means a family is not queuing at the dam for every drink. Slide the lid back. It fits into a rebate cut for it and settles with a small grinding sound. and it will not be lifted again until morning. Walk back to the plaza in the dark and look at the top of the tallest pyramid against the sky, because there is something up there that makes no sense until it does. Above the little temple at the summit stands a wall. It is tall, thin, and pierced with openings. It goes straight up from the roof line for another 30 or 40 feet, and it holds nothing up. There is no room behind it. It is a false front standing on a roof. They are called roof combs, and every major building here has one. In daylight, it carries sculpture, modeled plaster figures, painted, standing out from the open work, a whole scene facing outward across the plaza and readable from below with the naked eye. Its purpose is height. A temple 200 feet up is already above the canopy. A roof comb puts another 40 on top of that, and makes the building's silhouette unmistakable from the next city's high ground 20 miles away. That is not vanity. In a country with no hills to speak of, and a canopy that closes everything in, the only way one city can see another is over the trees. And these combs are how one city puts its name up where another city can read it. Tonight it is a black lattice with stars in the gaps. Watch for a while, and a bat goes through one of the openings and comes back through another. Nobody has been up there since the festival. There is a way up, inside the wall, narrow and worn. The men who repaint that sculpture use it once a year and hate it. Down at the western edge of the settlement, where the ground goes damp, there is a compound that makes pots. Its yard is full of things that must not get wet tonight. Go in quietly. Everybody here has been asleep for an hour, under a long thatch shelter, on boards laid across stones. Stand about 40 vessels in rows. Bowls, water jars with wide mouths, storage vessels the height of your knee, small tripod dishes, standing on 3 legs like little feet. Not one of them has been near a fire. They are the color of the riverbank they came from, a soft gray-brown. Touch one and it is cool and slightly damp. Use the flat of your fingers and never the tips. None of this was made on a wheel. There is no potter's wheel anywhere in this hemisphere. Each of these was built up from the base in coils, a rope of clay at a time, laid on and pinched together and worked smooth. The whole thing turns in a broken dish that spins in a hollow. Feel inside the biggest jar. The wall is even the whole way round, and the same thickness at the shoulder as at the base. That was done by hand and by eye, in a poor light. The person who did it has made several thousand of them. The clay was mixed with something before any of it began. Sherds of old broken pots, ground down and stirred in, so that the body can move a little when it heats and not split. Every region has its own recipe. A person who knows this trade can pick up a broken piece from another city and name where it came from, by the grit in it. These are plain, household wear, undecorated except for a band of red slip round the rim, made to be used daily and replaced when it goes. The painted ones with figures and glyph bands come out of a different kind of workshop entirely. The person who paints those can write, and is paid accordingly. A few here have been burnished. There is a small dark pebble on a cord hanging from the shelter post, worn to a shine. It has been rubbed over the leather-hard surface of the finished ones, until the clay lies down and takes a low gloss. That pebble came from the potter's mother. Pebbles like it turn up in graves. Tomorrow, if the weather holds, they will be fired. Not in a kiln, because there is no kiln here. They will be stacked on open ground, with wood packed over and around them, then burned hard for a few hours, and left alone to cool for most of a day. Some will not come through it. That is expected, and it is priced in. The ones that fail get broken up small, and go back into the clay for the next batch, which is why the mats are on tonight. The whole rack is covered against the dew. A wet pot in a hot fire is a lost pot, and the dew in this country is heavy. Lift the corner of a mat and lay it back down flat. Somewhere past the last wall, the forest is awake. 40 vessels wait under cloth in the dark. Back in the first compound, on the north side of the yard, stands the small building you have walked past all evening without giving it a thought. It is the most important thing this family owns. A granary standing on 4 legs. The posts are hardwood, sunk deep, and they hold the floor about chest high off the ground. The building on top is small and thatched, with a low door in one end and no window at all. Underneath it, there is a patch of swept shade where the dog lies in the afternoon. Halfway up each post there is a collar. It is a disc of smooth hard wood, wider than the post, fitted round it and facing down. That collar is the whole idea. A rat can climb a post. A rat cannot get out and round the underside of a smooth plate. After a few nights of trying, it goes off and works on somebody else's. The ladder that reaches the door is not attached to anything. It is a notched log, and it is lifted down every evening and laid in the grass. That settles the matter for the climbers and for the children at the same time. Put a hand up against the underside of the floor. It is dry and warm, and it smells of maize husk, which is a dusty, sweet smell with nothing green left in it. Inside, in the dark, the crop is stacked on the cob and still in the husk. The husks are folded back and tied in pairs, so the ears hang over poles in long rows. Air moves through all of it. That is the point of every detail here. A cob that stays dry keeps for a year. A cob that sweats does not last 2 months. This is the whole year. What is in there has to feed 13 people, and the turkeys and the dogs, until the next crop comes in. There has to be enough left standing at the end of it to plant with. A part of it is not theirs. Some share goes to the city as tribute, in maize or in cloth or in work. The household knows the figure and has already set it aside. In the older store behind the houses, what is over that line is the family's. The seed maize is not in with the rest. It hangs on its own at the far end, chosen ear by ear off the best plants in the best part of the field. It does not get eaten, not in a thin year, not in a bad one. That rule is older than this city, and it is a large part of why there is a city. Listen at the door for a moment. Something small moves along the top of the wall plate, stops, and after a while goes on. The husks shift very slightly, the way any stack settles. This year the granary is full to the roof pole, and the older one behind the houses is full as well. The rains came properly. The harvest is in and dry and up off the ground, and everybody in this compound went to sleep knowing it. That is what an ordinary good year looks like from the inside. The ladder lies in the grass. Come down the pyramid carefully and cross to a lower building on the eastern side, because there is a man up there who has been awake since sunset and will be awake until dawn. He is on a flat roof platform with a clear view east, sitting cross-legged with a folded cloth under him. Beside him is a low stone with 2 upright sticks set into it, and a length of cord. He is watching a planet, and he is doing it with his eyes and those 2 sticks and nothing else. The bright one that was low in the west after sunset has gone down now. In a while, before dawn, it will come up in the east. It is the same object, and the people of this city worked that out a very long time ago. Its behavior is written into their calendars with an accuracy that is difficult to believe until you check it. He knows how many days it will spend visible in the evening, how many it will disappear for, how many it will spend in the morning, and how many days the whole cycle takes. His numbers are within a day or 2 of correct over a span of centuries. They were reached by exactly this. Somebody sitting on a roof night after night for generations, writing it down. Watch him work. When the object he is waiting for clears the tree line, he lines it up between the 2 sticks and holds still. and then he makes a small mark with a piece of charcoal on a strip of bark paper across his knee. That is all. That is the entire observation. His father did this. His father's teacher did this. The record he is adding to is longer than his city's memory of its own founding. He does not look at us. Ask a person on a roof at midnight to explain what he is doing, and he will tell you the sky is a thing that keeps time. You will nod, and neither of you will have said anything the other did not already know. Sit down at the edge of his platform out of his light, and let us talk about the calendar, because it is the single most impressive thing this civilization made, and it is invisible in photographs. There are 2 cycles running at once, one of 260 days, made of 13 numbers turning against 20 named days, one of 365, made of 18 months of 20 days plus 5 left over at the end that nobody likes. Both run continuously. Any given combination of the 2 comes back around every 52 years. That 52-year period is a human lifetime and is treated as one, and underneath both of them runs the long count, which is simply a tally of days from a fixed point far back, written in 5 places, like a distance measured in units of 1, 20, 360, 7,200, 100, and 44,000, which means a date carved on a stone in this plaza is not a date in a rain. It is a day, absolutely located, that can be converted into your calendar and pinned to a Tuesday. No other civilization on Earth at this date can do that. The people who built this system also worked in a place value number system with a symbol for 0, centuries before that idea reached most of the world, and they used it to run these calculations into the millions of days in both directions. 0 is on that stone in the plaza. You touched it an hour ago and did not know. The watcher makes another mark. The forest rings on. Beside him, weighted at the corners with small stones, lies an open book, and it is nothing like a book you know. It is a single long strip of bark paper, coated on both faces with a thin white lime plaster, folded back and forth like a concertina, so that it opens into a run of pages and closes into a block. It is perhaps 8 inches high, and unfolded, would run the length of the platform. The paper comes from the inner bark of a fig, beaten with a stone until the fibers knit, then dried and sized. It is tough, flexible, and takes paint beautifully. The pages are ruled into panels with fine red lines. Inside them, columns of glyphs in black, numbers as bars and dots in red, and small painted figures. This one is a working document. It is a table of the planet he is watching, with its cycles laid out and correction factors built in, so that a person can look up where it should be and check whether it is there. Books like this hold the astronomy, the histories, the ritual calendars, the divination tables. Every city of any size has them. There are men and women in this city whose entire profession is making and copying them. Almost none of them will survive. Bark paper in a rainforest does not last. What was still in existence 800 years from now will be gathered up and burned deliberately by a Spanish friar who thought he was doing the right thing. He describes 27 of them going into one fire. The larger destroyer, quietly and over centuries, is the climate. Bark paper in a rainforest does not keep. 4 books escape. 4 out of thousands. There is no way to say that lightly, so we will simply say it and move on. The one in front of you tonight is open and in use and perfectly ordinary. Its owner is going to close it before the dew comes and wrap it in cloth. Behind the watcher, in a room off the platform, there is a workbench, and it is worth going in with your hands. Feel along it. Shallow dishes, a dozen of them, each with a dried crust in the bottom, a shell used as a palette, with a channel worn in the lip, brushes of animal hair bound to reed handles, standing in a jar. The colors in those dishes are the ones on every wall in this city. Red and yellow come out of the ground. Iron-rich clays ground and washed. Black is soot, collected off the underside of a cooking pot or burned deliberately from pine. White is the lime plaster itself. And then there is the blue. It is a particular blue, a strong clear turquoise that does not fade. It is made here by a method nobody outside this region worked out for another 1,000 years. Take a specific soft clay, mix it with a dye from the leaves of an indigo plant, and heat the mixture gently over copal resin. The dye locks into the clay structure and becomes something that neither sun nor damp can shift. Colors in the ancient world fade. This one does not. There are painted walls in this region that will come out of the ground 12 centuries from now, with that blue still singing. Pick up the shell palette. There is a smear of it dried on the rim, and even in the dark it catches what light there is and reads as color when everything else reads as gray. Put it back exactly where it was. Down the slope behind the household compounds, there is a small stone building with a very low doorway, and it is still warm inside. You have to duck almost double to get in, and then you are in a chamber barely high enough to sit up in, with a bench round the walls and a firebox in one corner and a stone floor. This is a sweat bath, and it is one of the most consistently found buildings in this whole civilization. Palaces have them. Ordinary neighborhoods have them. They stand in the ceremonial centers, built with as much care as anything else. It works simply. A fire is lit in the box, stones are heated, water is thrown. The low door is sealed with a mat. The steam has nowhere to go. It is used for washing and for aching bodies, and for the ordinary comfort of heat. It is also used at the beginning and end of things, for illness, and above all for childbirth and the days after it. That last is not incidental. Some sweat baths carry imagery tying them directly to birth and to the earth as a body, and midwives are associated with them across this region for centuries. Tonight it was used at sundown, and the fire is out and the stones are cooling. The whole small room smells of hot rock, wet ash, and the herbs somebody threw on the water. Sit on the bench in the dark for a minute. The stone under you is warmer than the air. The doorway is a low gray rectangle with the forest ringing beyond it. It is very likely the warmest place anywhere in this city tonight, and it belongs to everybody. Come out and go along to the end of the compound, where a row of hollow logs is stacked on a low frame under a thatched shelter. Put your ear near the end of one. There is a sound inside like a distant crowd. These are bees, and they have no sting. That is not a figure of speech. The native honeybees of this region cannot sting at all, and are kept in exactly this way, in sections of hollow log plugged at both ends with a clay cap and a small entrance hole in the middle. A household with 20 logs is a household with something to fall back on. The honey is thinner and more sour than the honey you know, and it is the only sweetener anybody here has, and it goes into a fermented drink used at festivals. The wax is worth as much as the honey, and it is what the lost wax casting of metal will run on, what seals things, and what the codex painters use. There is a whole body of knowledge attached to these logs: when to split a colony, how to move one, what the bees do before rain, which flowering tree in the garden is for them and not for anybody else. Tonight they are simply at home, in a stack of logs, humming quietly in a way you feel in the bone of your jaw when you lean close. A single one comes out of the entrance hole. It walks around the outside for a moment, then goes back in. Behind the palace range on the northern side of the plaza, there is a room with a low door and a wooden bar across it. What is inside is silent tonight, and will not be silent at the festival. Feel along the shelf. Drums first. A tall one of hollowed wood with a skin head standing on the floor, and beside it a shallower one held under the arm. Then a slit drum. A log with an H-shaped cut in the top leaving two tongues of different thickness, which is struck with rubber-headed sticks and gives two notes that carry for miles. Then the wind, flutes of clay 4 and 5 holes, glazed smooth by handling. Ocarinas shaped like birds and like small fat people, which are toys and are also instruments. Whistles that make a shrieking note nobody could call musical, and that everybody in the plaza can hear. Then the noise makers. Gourd rattles with seeds in them, strings of shell tinklers meant to be tied at the knee, a tortoise shell that is struck with a deer antler and gives a hard, hollow knock, and trumpets, long straight wooden ones, and conch shells brought from a coast several days away with the tip cut off, which take real breath and produce a low blaring note that gets into your chest. There is no writing for any of this. Not a single note of Maya music survives anywhere, and there is no notation system for it. What we have is the instruments themselves, and paintings of ensembles playing them, and the shapes of the rooms they played in, so we know exactly what these things are, and roughly how they sound, and nothing at all about what they played. Put the flute back on the shelf. The room smells of dry wood and old skin. Come round to the front of the same range, up a short stair, into a building that is long and low and has more doorways than anything else in the city. This is the palace, which is a misleading word. It is not one great hall. It is a run of narrow rooms, one behind another and side by side, each with a corbelled roof, opening onto galleries and small enclosed courtyards. Go into one. It is perhaps 8 feet wide and 20 long, and the walls come inward overhead until a line of capstones closes them. There is a stone bench along one side, wide enough to sleep on, a niche in the wall, and a curtain rod of wood set into holes in the jambs. The rooms are cool. Massive stone, thick walls, small openings, deep shade. This is the most comfortable building in the city in the afternoon and the least comfortable at dawn, and everybody who lives here knows which rooms to be in when. Who lives here is a court, the ruling family, their relatives, the officials, the scribes attached to them, and a substantial staff, several dozen people, in a warren of small rooms around courtyards, with the state business of the city conducted in the galleries and the open spaces between. There is nothing luxurious in the modern sense. The luxury is the plaster, the paint, the cool, the space, and the fact that nobody in here carries water. Tonight the rooms are dark and the curtains are down, and people are asleep on the benches under cotton. In the third courtyard along, someone has left a drinking vessel on the step. It is beautifully painted, and it has its owner's name around the rim in glyphs, and it will be found under a collapsed wall 1100 years from tonight. In a locked room off the same courtyard, wrapped in cloth and packed with dried herbs against insects, are the most valuable objects in this city. Feathers, not ordinary ones. The long, iridescent tail plumes of a bird that lives only in the cloud forest on the high slopes, 200 miles south of here, and will not survive captivity for long. Each bird carries 2 of them. They are close to a yard in length. In any light at all they shift between green and gold and blue, depending on where you stand. A headdress uses dozens. A royal one uses hundreds. They arrive here by trade in tubes, handled like glass. There are people whose whole profession is working them. mounting them on frames of cane and cotton, building the great fan-shaped headdresses that the figures on the stele are wearing. Hold one up in the dark. It weighs nothing at all. Draw it between 2 fingers, and the barbs zip closed behind them. This is the top of the entire economy of prestige in this world. Above jade, above cacao, the birds are protected in some places. Taking the feathers without killing the bird is preferred and, in some accounts, required. Nothing made of them survives, not one headdress anywhere. Feathers do not last 1,200 years in a rainforest. Everything we know about them comes from the paintings and the carvings, and from the specialized tools left behind. Wrap it back into the cloth. The herbs smell sharp and clean. Close the door. Behind the northern range, in a walled yard that nobody crosses at night, a slab of limestone is lying on its back on a bed of sand. It is 9 feet long, and it will stand upright when it is done. 2 log rollers are still under one end. There are drag marks all round it in the sand, and a coil of rope, a heap of stone chips that gets swept up every few days. Getting this slab here from the quarry took 20 men and most of a week. Somebody is out here with it. A man of about 50 is standing at the foot end with his arms folded, not working. He has been there long enough for the dew to settle on his shoulders. He came out because a spacing problem would not let him sleep. Look at what he has so far by feel, running a hand along the stone. The front face is smooth and slightly gritty and still holding a little of the day. Down the middle, a figure is coming out of it in high relief. The feet are finished, and the ankles and the long panel of the belt. Above that the surface is still rough, and the head and its headdress exist only as red lines painted on the flat. The layout was drawn first, in red across the whole face, before a single blow was struck. Those lines are still visible under everything he has not reached. Down the right side runs a column of glyph blocks, and this is what has him out of bed. The date is fixed. It is a period ending, a day the count arrives at whether anybody is ready or not, and it is a little over 2 years off. That date has to go on this stone, and it has to fit. Every block above it, and below it has to be sized so that it fits. There is no starting again with a slab this size. He counts the blocks with his fingertips in the dark, twice, the way you count money. They fit. He knew they fitted. He came out anyway. What the panel will say is decided already, and is not his to change. A ruler a day an act. Whoever reads it 1,200 years from now will get the day exactly right, and will argue about the act. The tools are on a bench along the wall, hammerstones of a harder rock, worn round, one for heavy work and a small one for close, chert punches with battered ends, a wooden mallet, a basket of coarse sand and a bowl for water, for the last stage. That stage is not carving at all but grinding, hour after hour, until the surface is even enough to take paint. Because it will be painted, the whole figure goes red, with details in other colors, and the glyphs get picked out. In this sun and this rain, the paint will need doing again every few years, by somebody younger. He works about 2 feet of this stone in a month. Somewhere past the last wall, the forest is awake. He puts a mat over the face of it and goes to bed. 2 hills over, in a compound like every other one, there is a house whose roof poles are hung with bundles. The smell of it reaches you out in the yard. The man who lives here has been out and has come back. Somebody sent for him at the end of the evening, half a mile each way in the dark. He has been home a while now, and he is not asleep. Stand in the doorway. It is warm inside and the air is dry, and it is full of plants. Above your head, tied in 3s and 4s and hung from the poles, are bundles of leaf and stem. Some are fresh enough to still be green by daylight. Some are a year old and have gone the color of paper. The smell comes off them in layers, one at a time, as your nose sorts them out. Something bitter and dusty, like a broken twig. Something clean and cold, not far from mint. Something heavy and sweet underneath all of it. Along the wall on a plank sits the rest. Bark curled and stacked in sizes. Roots in a basket, washed and dried, pale where the skin was scraped away. Seeds in stoppered gourds. Resin in a lidded pot half a hand deep, cousin to the copal burning in the yards outside. It is not the same thing, and it is not used the same way. There is a stone mortar, well worn, a small brush, a stack of shallow dishes with old stains in them. The bundles have to hang high and stay dry, which in this climate is a job on its own. Anything left on the floor here is mold inside a week. What all this is for, we are not going to guess at one plant at a time, and there are good reasons for that. Some of this knowledge was written down after the arrival of Europeans, by people who had it from their own families. Those books exist, and scholars read them carefully today. Much more of it never went onto paper at all. It traveled the way it always had, from a grandmother to a granddaughter. It is not lost either. It is still with people in this region now. It's theirs. Nothing said in the dark on a recording could do it justice. What can be said is the shape of the thing. This man is a farmer. He has a milpa like everybody else on the hill, and he was out in it this afternoon. He also knows every household within an hour's walk. He knows who is old in each one, and who is expecting, and who was fine in the spring and is quieter now. People come to him, and he goes to them. It costs a basket of something, or it costs nothing at all. He sits down first, and asks after the family before anything else happens. Tonight he is awake, because he is going back at first light. He wants to be sure of taking the pale bark, rather than the dark one. He ties that bundle before he lies down, so he cannot get it wrong. The leaves move a little overhead when the air shifts. In the largest of the 4 houses against the back wall stand 3 sealed jars, and what is in them is money. Cacao, the beans, fermented and dried, from pods that grow directly off the trunks of small trees in the shaded part of the garden. They are food, and they are also currency in the plainest sense. A day's labor, a turkey, a length of cloth, a canoe, all of these have a price in beans. The prices are known, and people carry beans in a pouch to market for exactly this reason. It is a currency that grows on trees, spoils in a few years, and can be eaten if things go badly, which is an odd sort of money by any measure, and a perfectly good one to everybody here. There are counterfeiters. People hollow out a bean, fill it with earth, and close it up. That practice is described in detail by Spanish writers in Mexico centuries after tonight. And whether anybody is doing it in this particular market, we cannot say, though it is hard to imagine nobody had thought of it. Open a jar and put your hand in. The beans are dry, hard, slightly oily. They smell faintly of the drink they will become. Bitter, roasted, and nothing whatever like the sweet thing your century made of them. The drink here is not sweet. The beans are roasted, ground on the same stone as the maize, mixed with water and chili and sometimes maize flour, then poured from one vessel to another from a height, over and over, until it stands up in a thick foam. The foam is the point. Vessels are painted with the drinker's name and the word for the drink, and sometimes the specific kind in glyphs around the rim, which is how the word for cacao was decoded in the first place. This is a high-status thing. The people in this compound drink it rarely, at ceremonies, and what is in these jars is mostly going to market. Reseal the jar. The lid is a plate of fired clay with a cloth under it, and it goes back with a soft grating sound that the sleeping room hears and ignores. On a shelf beside the jars, there is a bundle wrapped in cloth, and inside it are blades sharper than any metal. Obsidian, volcanic glass, black and glossy, brought here from the highlands hundreds of miles away, carried on somebody's back in the form of prepared cores. A skilled worker sets a core on his thigh, positions a pressure tool against the edge, leans. A blade springs off it, long, straight, parallel-sided, and sharp beyond anything you have handled. A fresh obsidian edge is thinner than a surgical steel one. It will shave hair off your arm without touching skin. Feel the flat of one, not the edge. The surface is glass smooth and slightly cold, the only cold thing you have touched all night. Every household here has these. They are the knife, the scraper, the razor, the surgical instrument. They are also the reason there is no metal in this room at all. Nobody in this whole civilization is working metal at this date. Obsidian is better for cutting than bronze would be, and cheaper, and everywhere, so the need never became urgent enough. Blades this good come off the core in a few seconds each and are used until they dull, which takes a while, and then thrown away. The rubbish middens of these cities are full of them. There is a smaller bundle beside it. Chert, the local stone, tougher and duller, for the work that would shatter glass, and a third of bone tools for leather. Wrap the cloth back over the blades and put them on the shelf, high, where the children cannot reach. In the smallest house, in a niche in the wall, wrapped twice in cloth, there is one object worth more than everything else this family owns. It is a bead, jade about the size of a thumb joint, drilled through the middle, worn smooth by handling. Hold it up. Even in the dark it feels different, dense, cool, and it warms slowly against the skin rather than instantly. Jade in this part of the world comes from exactly one place, a river valley several hundred miles to the south. Every piece of it in this city traveled that distance in stages, hand to hand, at the price such a journey implies. It is the most valuable material these people have, above gold, which they know and do not particularly care about. The reason is not scarcity alone. Green is the color of young maize, of water, of breath, of life continuing. And jade is that color made permanent. Rulers are buried in it. Masks are built from hundreds of fitted plates. A bead is put in the mouth of the dead. Working it is slow beyond belief. Jade is far too hard to carve with anything available here, so it is cut by abrasion. A cord, sand, water, and time. Weeks for a bead, months for anything shaped. There are unfinished pieces in workshops in this region, with the sawing groove halfway through, abandoned, and nobody will ever know why. This bead belonged to the grandmother's mother. It is not jewelry in daily use. It comes out for particular days. Wrap it and put it back in the niche exactly as it was, and go back out to the yard. Walk back up to the ceremonial center by the northern path, and stop where the ground opens into a plaza that is not the great one. This is the market, and it is a different kind of empty. The great plaza is empty the way a cathedral is empty. This one is empty the way a school hall is empty on a Sunday. There are traces everywhere of what happens here, and none of them have been tidied. Post holes in the plaster in rows, where the stall frames go. A scatter of cacao husks blown against the base of a wall. A broken pot, swept aside but not carried off. The ground darker in patches where things were spilled. By day, this is one of the busiest places in the region. Salt from the coast, dried fish, cotton cloth, feathers, obsidian, jade, honey, pottery, tobacco, rubber, slaves. Traders who came in along the white roads with 60 pounds on a tumpline. Canoe men whose goods came up the rivers and then overland. There is no coinage. There is cacao, and there are standard lengths of cloth. Above all, there is bargaining. in a place where everybody knows what everything is roughly worth. Nothing about tonight suggests any of that. The square is a pale rectangle, with a dog crossing it diagonally. Stand a moment where the stalls stand. The plaster is warm still at this hour, and it holds the shape of 1,000 feet. Go back to the compound. In the largest house, one person is not asleep. The grandmother has been lying on her side on the bench, with her eyes open for the best part of an hour. Her hip aches. It has ached for 11 years, since a fall on the stair of the eastern platform during a festival, and she has never once mentioned it to anybody. She is not distressed. She is simply awake in the dark with a hip that hurts and a great deal to think about. There is a granddaughter asleep against her back. A hand of that child is pressed flat between the grandmother's shoulder blades in the way that small hands end up. She is thinking about the maize. This year was good, and the last was thin. And everybody in this compound remembers the year before that, which was the one nobody discusses. The rains came late twice, then they came properly, and the reservoir filled and the fields carried, and the thing that had begun to be a real fear stopped being one. She has known 3 of those. Her mother knew 4. There is no way for her to know that the rains will fail, badly and repeatedly, within the lifetime of the child asleep against her back, that this city will be a very different place 100 years from tonight, and that the forest will begin to take the plaza. She is thinking instead about whether the aunt's cotton will be finished before the festival. The forest rings on. She moves her hip a little and finds no better position and stops trying. Somewhere near the middle of the night, the forest changes, and it is worth going back out to the plaza to hear it happen. The cicadas go first, and they do not fade, they stop, one tree at a time, over about 20 minutes, until the hard, dry sawing that has been under everything since sunset is simply not there. The frogs thin out next. The big ones near the reservoir keep going, but the small piercing ones give up, and the gaps between calls stretch. What is left is a quieter and stranger layer. Crickets still but far apart. A single bird somewhere that makes one note every few minutes, and has been doing it since dark. Something moving on the ground in leaf litter, stopping moving, and an enormous low absence underneath it all, which is the sound of a rainforest holding still, and which is not silence, because a rainforest never manages silence. The plaza is cool now for the first time. Not cold. The plaster under your bare feet is still warmer than the air, and will be until nearly dawn. But the air itself has finally let go of the day. Dew is starting. Run your hand along the top of a stella, and it comes away damp. There is nobody awake in this city except the man on the dam, the watcher on his platform, a nursing mother 2 hills away, the grandmother with her hip, somewhere past the last wall. The forest is awake, but only just and only in places. In a storeroom near the market square, there are sacks of something white, and it came a very long way. Salt. This city sits in the middle of a limestone forest hundreds of miles from any sea, and every human being in it needs salt to live, and needs more of it in this climate than a person in a cold country ever would. There is none here, not a grain, naturally occurring within many days' walk. So it comes. Along the northern coast, there are lagoons where seawater is let into shallow pans and left to the sun. And further round the peninsula, there are places where brine is boiled in pots over wood fires until only the salt is left. The broken pots from that industry lie in mounds you could build a house from. From there it moves inland, by canoe up the rivers as far as canoes can go, then on backs along the roads, in loaves and in sacks, changing hands and gaining price at every stage. Put your hand into the open sack. It is coarse, damp, and gray rather than white, and it clumps. A household buys it in small amounts and guards it. It seasons everything, and more importantly, it preserves. Fish brought up from the coast and meat, when there is any, are salted rather than eaten fresh. That is the only way either of them travels. There is no way to overstate how much of this civilization's trade is really about this one substance. Whole coastal towns exist for nothing else. Whole trade routes exist to move it. There are periods when control of the salt is control of the region, and it is sitting here in a dark room in a sack, looking like nothing at all. Take the western road out past the last compounds and walk most of the morning to the nearest navigable water, because everything heavy that ever came into this city came that way. We will do it in a few minutes, the way you can in the dark. The river is not wide, 50 feet, sluggish at this season, brown, with forest closing right to the edge on both banks, and a landing of packed clay cut into the near side. 3 canoes are pulled up. Each is a single tree, hollowed and shaped, 30 feet long and narrow enough that 2 people cannot sit abreast. There is no keel and no sail. They are poled in the shallows and paddled in the deep. A loaded one sits low enough that a hand trailed over the side is in the water. This is the freight system. A man on a tumpline carries 60 pounds. A canoe carries a ton. Anything bulky, salt, grain, pottery, stone, comes by water as far as water goes, and only then takes to the roads. The rivers run to the sea, and along that coast there are trading canoes far bigger than these, seagoing, with awnings amidships and paddlers by the dozen, working the whole rim of this world from the peninsula down to the isthmus. Sit on the landing. The water goes past with a small continuous sound. Something rises out in the middle and drops back. There are crocodiles here, not many and not interested but present, and everybody knows which stretches to stay out of after dark. The canoes are tied to a stake with rope of twisted bark. The mud around them is printed all over with bare feet, and with the long trailing marks where the hulls were dragged up. Tomorrow one of them goes downstream with cacao. 2 compounds along the hillside, a farmer is awake, and he is doing the arithmetic that everybody in this city does in the dark. He is 40. He has worked the same 3 fields for 22 years, and he knows the exact order in which they were cleared, rested, and burned, what each of them carried in each of those years. What he is thinking about is the rain, not tonight's because there is none. The rains have gone for the season and will not return for months, and that is normal and expected and built into everything. He is thinking about the last 3 years. The first was normal. The second came 10 days late and stopped early. The third came properly, and everybody exhaled. 3 years is not a pattern. He knows that. His mother would have told him it is not a pattern. But he has begun, without deciding to keep the count. And that is what he is doing at 2 in the morning, lying on a stone bench in the dark, listening to a forest that has gone quiet, running the last few years past himself again and getting the same answer, which is that it is probably nothing. The soil in his upper field is thinner than it was when he started. Everybody's is. There are more people on this hillside than there were. The fields have less rest between burnings than they used to, and each of those facts on its own is manageable. He turns over. His wife says something without waking. He stops thinking about it mostly. 3 compounds along the ridge, on a bench by the door where the air moves. An old man is awake and is not troubled about it. He is 71, which is not common here and is not extraordinary either. He sleeps in pieces now. 2 hours, then an hour of lying still, then 2 more. The middle stretch is the one he has come to like. He is thinking about a day when he was 7. The building on the eastern side of the plaza was finished that year, and there was a dedication. Everybody on this hill walked in along the white road in the morning, while the plaster was still cold underfoot. He remembers the cold of it, because he had never been on the plaza that early. He remembers being lifted onto his father's shoulder, and the exact feel of holding a man's forehead with both hands. He remembers the plaza full, not the number of people, because a child does not count. What he kept was the white running out at the edges and turning into people, the whole way round. There was music, a long low note from somewhere he could not see. He felt it in his chest before he understood it was a sound. Under it, a drum slower than a walk. The ruler he remembers as small and far away and very bright. A figure up on the terrace above them in green feathers a yard long, and the feathers moved when he moved. That is genuinely all of it. A boy of 7 on a shoulder, at the back in the heat, watching something small and bright a long way off. What he mostly remembers is being thirsty. A woman near them gave him a drink out of her gourd without saying anything, and his father never noticed that it happened. That ruler has lain under the eastern building for a long time now. His son ruled after him, and his son's son rules tonight. The stone in the plaza carries all of it in order, day by day. The old man has no interest in the stone. He has never been able to read it. Almost nobody in this city can, which is rather the point of rioting here, and it has never bothered him in the least. What he does instead is count. There were 4 other children on this hill who stood on the plaza that morning. 2 of them are still alive. One is here on the ridge. One lives 40 minutes off, and he sees her at market, and she says the awning over the terrace was green. He knows perfectly well that it was blue. He decided some years ago to let her have it, and he has not managed to do it once. Somewhere past the last wall, the forest is awake. He turns over and takes his next 2 hours. Go back up to the great plaza in the middle of the night and lie down flat on the plaster. There is no better floor anywhere for what comes next. The stone under your back is still warm. It has been warm since yesterday morning, and it will hold on for another hour or 2, and the dew has not reached this open ground yet. Now look up and give it a while. The sky over this city has nothing in the way. No smoke tonight, no lamp anywhere within 100 miles, no glow on any horizon. There is not one light source in this hemisphere at this date, big enough to put a haze in the air above a plaza. What is over you is simply what is there. At first, there are the bright ones. Then, as your eyes give up on the day, twice as many. Then twice again, until the gaps close and the sky has texture in it rather than points. Across the middle of all that runs the band. It goes from one horizon to the other, about as wide as your hand held up at arm's length, brighter in some stretches than in others. At this latitude it passes very high, close to straight overhead, and the thickest part of it is up there tonight. It is bright enough to find a step by. Down the center of the band, running most of its length, there is a dark lane. That is dust, lying between here and the far side, and it splits the whole thing in 2. The people of this city look at the same sky and see a road. The reading comes from painted vessels and from books written down after the arrival of Europeans. Scholars are careful about how far to push it. The shape of it is clear enough to say plainly. The band is a road or a river, and things travel along it. In some of the painted scenes, it stands up instead of lying across, and when it stands up, it is a tree. The dark lane down the middle is part of the account rather than a flaw in it. Nearer the eastern horizon, there is a small tight knot of stars that everybody here can find without looking for it. Not the 3 in a row that you may have been taught to call a belt. A wider triangle, one corner of that row, and two bright stars well away from it on either side. 3 stones set on the ground with a fire between them. That is the hearth in every house on this hillside, laid out overhead at full size. The faint blur sitting inside the triangle is the smoke. That is not an image invented for tonight. 3 stones round a fire is the floor plan of the room the family sleeps in. None of it moves while you watch. The way to catch it is to look once, then close your eyes for what feels like a long time. Look again, and everything has slid a hand's width west. Try it a third time, and you will not get there. The plaster keeps its warmth. Out past the last compound, where the garden gives way to real forest, something is moving that makes no sound at all. You will not see it. Almost nobody in this city ever sees one, and that is the whole point of the animal. A jaguar hunts by not being noticed. It moves on pads the size of a spread hand, and the last 20 feet of any approach take it several minutes. It works river edges and forest floor, and it is entirely at home in water, which most cats are not. It is not interested in the city. There are deer and peccary and agouti out here in far better numbers than anything a village offers. A household dog is not worth the noise, but it is very much in the city's mind. It is on the walls in the plaza, on the pottery in the compound, in the names rulers give themselves, in the pelts that only certain people are allowed to wear. A ruler sits on a jaguar cushion. A ruler's name has a jaguar in it. The animal stands for the night, for the power that does not have to raise its voice, for the thing that moves between here and elsewhere. In a forest this thick, the animal that can see you and that you cannot see is the natural shape for those ideas to take. Tonight it goes along a ridge 400 yards from the last house, unhurried. It stops once to listen to something we cannot hear, and then goes on. Nothing in the compound stirs. The dog in the yard lifts its head at nothing in particular, and lowers it again. Come back along the garden path and stop where the trees close over, because the forest floor here is doing something. There are lights in it, dozens of them, low down among the leaf litter and the fallen wood, greenish, steady rather than blinking, each about the size of a grain of rice. Some of them are beetle larvae, some of them are fungus, threading through rotten wood and glowing along the strands, which is a thing that happens in wet forests everywhere, and which almost nobody sees because you have to be in the dark with adjusted eyes and no lamp. And in the air above them at head height, the flashing kind, fireflies working the gaps between the trees, each species with its own rhythm, and it is the rhythm, rather than the brightness, that a female is reading. Stand absolutely still and let your eyes go. After a couple of minutes there are more of them than you first thought, in 3 separate layers. The ground glow, the low drifting flashes, and further in, deep among the trunks, occasional single pulses that are a long way off. None of this is warm, cold light produced with almost no waste, by an animal that a person here can hold in a cupped hand. The children of this compound catch them, of course. Every child in every century that has had fireflies has caught them. The ones here put them under an upturned gourd to see how many it takes to see by. The answer is more than you can catch. The lights go on drifting. The compound sleeps 40 yards away. Sit down on the low wall at the garden's edge, because this is the one hard thing in tonight, and it deserves saying plainly and then leaving alone. Look at what is behind you, a ceremonial center plastered from end to end in lime. Every square yard of that plaster required limestone burned at high temperature for many hours, and the fuel for that is wood. Look at what is in front of you. Fields cut into hillsides, feeding several thousand people who mostly do not grow their own food. Both of those are eating the forest. The pollen record from the reservoir mud tells this story without any interpretation needed. Go down through the layers, and the forest species drop away, and the weeds and grasses and maize rise, decade on decade, exactly as the city grows. Nobody here is doing anything stupid. Every household terraces, every field is rotated and rested. The gardens are worked forest rather than cleared ground. This system has held for centuries and is holding tonight, but the margin is thinner than it was when the grandmother was a girl. The good soil is further from the center, and the lime for the next building will come from further out again. There is no villain in this. There is a lot of people, in a place that supports a lot of people until it does not, doing sensible things one at a time. We are not going to spend the night on it. The reservoir is full, the Maize is in, and everyone in this compound is well, the sleepers asleep, and the grandmother sitting up with her hip in the dark, which is its own kind of peace. Back in the house, one of the children has sat up on the bench and does not know why. He is about 4. He was asleep, and now he is not, and the room is completely black and full of breathing. He does not cry. He sits for a moment with his hands in his lap, listening to the forest, which he has heard every night of his life, and which is not frightening to him in the least. Then he gets down off the bench, feeling for the floor with his toes, and walks 4 steps with his hands out to where he knows the water jar is. He finds the gourd dipper by touch, drinks, puts it back on the rim, and stands there. The grandmother, who is still awake, says one word. Not a question, just his name, quietly from the dark. He goes over, and she lifts the edge of her cloth, and he climbs up onto the bench and lies down along her front with his back against her. She puts the cloth over both of them. Neither of them says anything else. His breathing goes long inside a minute and a half. Hers does not, but her hip stops mattering quite as much, because that is how it works. The turkeys are silent. The dog has moved into the doorway of the house at some point and is lying across it. Outside, the forest has thinned to its quietest layer. One frog by the reservoir is still going, and will still be going at dawn. There comes a point, an hour or 2 before the light, when this country gets as cool as it is going to get, and it arrives now. It is not cold. This is the tropics, and it is the wet season's end, and the air will not go below the temperature of a mild spring evening, but everything has been giving heat away to a clear sky all night. The difference from the afternoon is enough to notice on your skin. Dew has settled on everything now. The thatch is soaked on the outside. The stone bench outside the house has a film of water on it. The plaza is damp and no longer glowing, and the plaster there has finally gone cool to the touch for the first time since yesterday morning. Mist forms in the low ground. Go and look at the reservoir. There is a flat white layer over it, knee-deep, lying absolutely still. The frogs are under it, and the dam and the man sitting on it are above. He has pulled his cloth up over his shoulders and is sitting with his arms round his knees. He will be relieved at first light. Up in the compounds, everybody is under cloth now. The families that went to sleep spread out along their benches have closed in against each other without waking, the way people do. The forest is at its lowest. The cicadas are hours gone. Even the frogs have thinned. What is left is a wide, damp, ringing stillness. The smell of wet leaves and cold ash, and faintly, from the compound behind you, last night's copal. Somewhere past the last wall, the forest is awake, but it is the smallest awake it gets. Go back up to the platform on the eastern building, because the man there is nearly done, and it is the best few minutes of his night. He has been waiting for this since sunset. The bright object has cleared the tree line in the east, exactly where his cord and sticks said it would. He is lining it up now with his head tilted and one eye closed. It is very bright, brighter than anything else in the sky, hard and white and completely steady while the stars around it shift and flicker. He holds the sighting for a while, then makes his mark on the bark strip, then sits back. That is his year's work, one mark at a time. The table he is checking was compiled by somebody dead a long time before him, and it is still right. And the fact that it is still right is the whole reason his city trusts the book. He rolls his shoulders. He is stiff. Then he does the thing that is not in any table. He sits for a while and looks at it without measuring anything, in the way that anybody who works with the sky ends up doing. There is no record of that anywhere, and there never will be. The east is going gray behind the planet. Within 20 minutes, it will be too light to see. Then he will fold the book along its creases and wrap it in its cloth. He will go down and sleep through the morning. Below him, the city is a dark spread of thatch under a paling sky, and the first bird has just started. Stand in the yard with your head back and watch the space between the thatch and the trees, because it is full of traffic. Bats, dozens of them, working the gap over the compound in fast, irregular loops. Every one of them is hunting insects that were drawn in by the last of the fire. You will hear almost nothing. What they are doing is shouting continuously at a pitch far above anything you can register, and listening to the shape of what comes back. To them this yard is fully lit. The thatch edge, the water jars, the frame with the cotton on it, the moths, all of it drawn in returning sound. There are more kinds of bat in this forest than there are kinds of every other mammal put together. Insect eaters mostly, fruit eaters, which are the reason half the trees in the garden are here at all, because they carry seeds miles and drop them. Nectar feeders, with long tongues that pollinate flowers, which open only at night for exactly that purpose. And the vampire, which is real, and which is a small quiet animal that takes a teaspoon from a sleeping turkey and leaves. Nobody in this compound is worried about any of them. Bats roost in the roof of the house you have been sitting in, and nobody would dream of removing them. Watch one come in under the eave, along the wall, and out through the gable gap without touching anything. They will work until about 2 hours before dawn, and then go up into the roofs and the caves and hang. The moths they are chasing came to the fire. The fire went down an hour ago. The traffic is already thinning. Sit on the stone bench outside the house and simply breathe for a while, because the air here changes about 4 times between dusk and dawn, and almost nobody notices. At sunset it was smoke and toasted maize and chili. The whole hillside smelled of supper, and it hung under the trees without moving. By full dark that had thinned to wood smoke alone. Then the copal came over it, sweet and resinous and heavy, drifting from compound to compound. By midnight the smoke was gone entirely, and what was left was the forest itself. Wet leaf, rotting wood, and the particular green sweetness that a rainforest gives off at night, which is the smell of an enormous mass of living matter breathing out. Now at this hour there is something else again. The dew has brought the ground up. Wet earth, wet plaster, wet thatch, and from the garden the sharp cold smell of crushed leaves where somebody walked, and under all of it, faint and constant, the reservoir. Still water, algae, mud. Breathe once more slowly. There is no smoke anywhere in this city right now. In 2 hours, there will be 60 fires going within earshot, and the whole hillside will smell of morning. The bench under you is wet and cold. The house behind you is breathing in the dark. 2 compounds east, in the last of the dark, A woman opens her eyes and is completely awake. There is no reason for it that she could give you. She is about 30. She has done this every day since she was a girl. Nobody in this household has ever had to wake her, and she has never once been late. There is no clock of any kind in this city, and nothing to go by at this hour but frogs. She lies still for a minute and lets the house be quiet around her. The doorway is a gray rectangle now instead of a black one, though only just, and only if you have been lying in the dark for hours. There are no birds yet. The one frog down at the tank is still going, the way it has gone since midnight. The cricket ring has thinned out to something far apart and occasional. She knows the hour from the cool on her face, and from that frog. It is close enough. It always is. Then she gets up, in one movement, carefully, because there is a child asleep along her back and another across her feet. Outside, the yard is soaked. The packed earth has gone dark and soft on top, and the stone bench has a film of water on it. Her prints fill in slowly behind her as she crosses. The air is the coolest it has been all night, and it smells of wet thatch and cold ash. Last night's copal is still in the plaster of the little platform in the corner. She drinks first, from the jar out of the gourd, standing up. Then she does the round, and it takes her about 4 minutes. Her palm goes flat over the hearth ash to find the warm spot, and the warm spot is there. The mat comes off the bowl, where the maize has been sitting all night in lime water. She puts 2 fingers in and rubs a kernel, and the skin slides off, which means it is ready. The water jars get looked into. The notched log goes back up against the granary door, because it will be wanted within the hour. None of this is hurried, and none of it is even properly awake yet. Her hands are doing it, and she is somewhere behind them. Then she sits down on the doorstep with a length of cloth round her shoulders, and does nothing. This is the part she gets. About a quarter of an hour, before the fire, before the grinding, before 11 people need something from her, she sits on a cold stone step with her arms round her knees, looking out at a doorway full of dark trees. She is not thinking about much. The mist is coming up off the low ground in a flat white layer that has no edges. A bat goes over the yard late and drops into the roof above her without a sound. Somewhere past the last wall, the forest is awake. Then from the corner, the turkeys start. She gets up. The sky over the eastern forest has stopped being black. The change is so gradual that you will notice it about 10 minutes after it started. Nothing is colored yet. The world has simply gone from black to a very dark gray. The canopy line, which has been a solid edge all night, has begun to have texture in it. Individual crowns, then individual branches. The stars go in a particular order. The faint ones first, all at once, as if a hand went over them. Then the middling ones. The planet the Watcher was measuring holds on longer than anything else, and is the last thing in that half of the sky. Down in the compound, the dew is at its heaviest. Everything you touch is wet. The thatch is dark with it, and dripping slowly at the eaves onto the packed earth, in a ring. That ring is worn into the yard from years of the same drip. The turkeys start first, before any bird, with a low croaking mutter from the corner, and one of them gets up and shakes. The dog in the doorway lifts its head, stretches its front legs out flat, and yawns enormously. Inside the house, nobody has moved. The mist over the reservoir has begun to lift from underneath, and the man on the dam has stood up and is walking the length of it slowly to get the stiffness out. Somewhere past the last wall, the forest is beginning to wake up properly, and it is going to be loud. Here it comes, and there is nothing in the world quite like it in a place this green. It starts with one bird close, a rising 3-note whistle repeated 4 times. Then another answers from further off. Then, within about 5 minutes, everything. There are more kinds of bird within sight of this yard than in whole countries elsewhere. Parrots go over in pairs, screaming, always in pairs. Toucans make a sound nothing like what their appearance suggests, a hoarse, repeated croak from the tops of fruiting trees. Woodpeckers start work. Small things in the undergrowth produce liquid runs of notes that stop dead in the middle. And then the howlers again, both troops in the gray light, exactly as they did at dusk. It rolls over the whole valley one more time and stops. Listen to it as one thing. It is not competitive noise. Each of these animals is broadcasting on its own frequency and its own rhythm. The reason a rainforest dawn sounds like a single, enormous organism is that they have divided the sound the way a city divides its streets. In the compound, this is the alarm clock and always has been. Nobody in this household has ever needed anything else. The grandmother is already sitting up. The child against her has-been rolled gently onto the bench and has not woken. She gets up stiffly, both hands on the bench edge, straightens, and stands for a second before she trusts the hip. Then she goes to the hearth. Watch her do this, because it is the oldest routine in this house, and she does it without a wasted movement. She crouches at the hearth and puts her hand flat over the ash, an inch above it, and holds it there. Warm. Good. She scrapes the gray skin off the top with a stick, and underneath there is a dull orange glow the size of a coin. She lays 3 fingers of dry palm frond on it, sets her face close and blows. One long, steady breath, not a puff. The glow spreads, goes yellow, catches. Smoke first, thick and white and sudden, then a small flame. 3 sticks on top, laid so the air can get under. The flame takes them. The whole thing has taken about 90 seconds, and there is now a working fire where there was a cold hearth. It never actually went out, and it has not gone out in this compound for as long as anybody can remember. The griddle goes on the 3 stones. The water jar comes over. The maize that was left soaking overnight in lime water gets rinsed, and one of the wives, who is up now too, starts grinding it on the stone with the long forward and back stroke that everybody in this city wakes up to the sound of. That sound is now coming from every compound on this hillside, dozens of them, none in time with each other, under the birds. The first tortilla goes on the griddle before the sun is up. Out on the white road in the gray light, people are already moving, and almost all of them are carrying water. 2 young women come up from the reservoir with jars on their shoulders, walking in step without trying. A boy behind them has a smaller one and is being careful about it. The jars are heavy. A full one is a serious weight. The walk from the tank to the far compounds is a quarter of a mile uphill. This happens 2 or 3 times a day, every day in every household, and it is mostly done by women and children. That is the daily arithmetic of a city with no river. It is the reason the household tanks matter so much, and the reason the plastered plazas exist. Along the road, others. A man with a bundle of firewood on a tump line across his forehead, leaning into the weight. 2 men going out to the fields with digging sticks, and no conversation. Somebody with a covered basket, going toward the market square early to get a good spot. Nobody is hurrying, and nobody is late. The first 2 hours after dawn are the best working hours of the day here, before the heat, and everybody is spending them. The white road is not glowing anymore. In this light it is simply pale and wet, and marked all over with the prints of bare feet going both ways. Come back to the great plaza one last time in the first real light, and stand where you stood at dusk. The color is coming back into the buildings, and it comes back from the top down. The high terraces go first, from gray to a dull rose, then to the full iron red. The line of that color moves down the pyramid as the sun clears the forest. The plaza floor lights up all at once and is briefly, genuinely dazzling. Several acres of white plaster with the sun on it and the dew steaming off it in a low haze. People are crossing it now. Not many yet, and none of them ceremonially. A man carrying a roll of matting, two women going toward the market square, a group of boys running. Smoke is going up from the compounds, in the trees on every side, thin and straight, dozens of columns of it. At the base of the stele, somebody has already been. There are fresh copal fragments in the little dish at the foot of the nearest one, still smoking faintly. Up on the eastern platform, the watcher has gone. The book is not there. The two sticks are still standing in their stone. And on the top step of the Great Pyramid, 200 feet up, a single figure is standing looking east into the sun, small as a seed from here, and doing nothing at all that we can see. The hour before dawn is behind us now. This city has done what it does, and it will do it again tonight without us. Stay where you are. There is nothing left to walk to. Think, if you are still awake, about how ordinary all of it was. A woman made bread on a hot stone. A man sat on a dam. A child got up in the dark for water and was called back by name. Somebody watched a planet come up and made a mark on a piece of bark, the way people here had been doing for 400 years. Nothing was ending. That is the thing to take with you. This city has, from tonight, something like a century and a half of good life left. Then the rains will fail more often than they come. The reservoirs will go down, and people will begin to leave in ones and twos and then in families. And the plaza will be swept less often. And 1 year nobody will replaster. The forest will come back over all of it. The white roads first, then the market square, then the great buildings. The red will go, and travelers will one day ride within 50 yards of that pyramid and not see it. But nobody will vanish. There is no mystery here, and no lost race. The people of this city will move and settle elsewhere and go on. Their descendants will be farming within sight of these hills tonight, in your century, speaking languages that these voices would recognize. The fire is lit. The maize is grinding. The water is coming up the road on somebody's shoulder. Wherever you are lying now, all of it can manage without you a while longer. Somewhere past the last wall, the forest is awake. It always was. It was here first, and it is patient, and tonight nobody minds. This was worlds before morning.